Hey, hello everyone. Hey, nice to see you here. Thank you so much for joining the webinar today. So, without further ado, let me jump into the agenda. So, what we have for today. So, we will start with the role of blockchain and smart contracts in the voluntary carbon market. So, Andrew Bonneau will take the lead. Then Stefano Cappello from Limenet will share his personal story, and he will highlight his project from Italy, and he will share some information on how blockchain and dMRV support scaling and transparency for his project. Then Gordon will join us from One Earth Fund, and he will share his project story and explain why he made this decision to issue carbon credits on chain and what it meant for him. And then we will go into the deep dive of the product. So yeah, let's start with Andrew. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Daria. And yeah, great to see the attendees here. Thanks for joining us this morning or this afternoon, wherever you are. So first bit here is just an overview at a high level of the role of blockchain and some of the key pieces related to credit issuance. So on the left side, we have project design. That's where the project developers are coming in. They're actually developing the project, working with VVBs to ensure that it gets validated. And this piece, of course, is generally on the traditional carbon registry infrastructure. The other key piece of credit issuance is in regard to MRV, so the monitoring, reporting, and verification work. And here is where traditionally, let's say for a nature-based project, people are traveling to the field, they're conducting measurements. But what we're increasingly starting to see is that more of this work can be undertaken using remote sensing technology or other digital tools, IoT, and so on. So this is one piece that I'm going to explore in a future slide because it also can involve blockchain technology as a way to secure that data. And finally, we have the transactions themselves. And after credits are issued, you have to find a market for them. And this is traditionally undertaken by brokers, but increasingly as well through different types of marketplaces, including marketplaces that leverage blockchain technology. And from that, you can automate certain processes in the market that we'll take a look at there. So that's a high level overview. And so what are buyers today looking for? Well, they want to make sure that they're buying credits that have real additional and tangible emissions reductions, basically that they're having the impact that they say they have. And they also want clear environmental and social benefits backed by that transparent data. And finally, there needs to be more choice in the market, and buyers want to have up-to-date information on what's available. So we're looking at the faster go-to-market essentially for these credits. And that's helpful for project developers too, because of course, then they get paid back and they can continue to develop other projects. So then on the next slide, what project developers are dealing with today. Well, just by the nature of the infrastructure that's being utilized, project developers often are facing quite high issuance costs for the carbon credits themselves. And this process is generally quite complex. It can be seen as slow in some ways. And some of this is just by the nature of the sheer volume of credits getting registered, but it's also based on the processes that are undertaken at the registries today to validate and also verify projects themselves. And then finally, we have quite a complex and fragmented market. And this is especially in relation to the movement of liquidity between different registries, marketplaces, and so on. And as we touched on in previous webinars, blockchain itself can serve as this shared infrastructure layer that can securely transfer these assets between these different market hubs, if you want to call them that. So moving on then. So where do we see the role of blockchain in the VCM? Well, we believe that there's a number of the aforementioned challenges that can be helped out through using a shared infrastructure layer, such as blockchain. One is on the credit issuance side. So of course, right now, credits are still issued on traditional registries generally, but you can issue credits directly onto the blockchain itself. And there are carbon registries that are already leveraging blockchain technology. So for example, ICR, or the National Carbon Registry, as well as Eco Registry. They use blockchain technology, and of course, we've had great interoperability in being able to connect with them because of that tech-led approach. The other piece is there is a level of intermediary elimination, you could say, which we believe can help reduce costs and inefficiencies. But importantly, that also means that a greater share of the capital from the sale of the offsets can go back directly to the project developers themselves, which we believe is, that's a core objective of this market. We want more capital going to the carbon project developers so that they can scale up those carbon mitigation and removal activities. And the final piece, which I think is quite interesting, actually, if anyone's played around in the so-called DeFi space, decentralized finance or blockchain, you'll just know that there's a tremendous amount of data available in real time. And that's because all the transactions that are occurring are recorded on a public ledger. And so when you have this carbon market activity taking place on the blockchain, you also have real-time information essentially on the availability of the credits, all the details, the metadata around them, certification standard, et cetera. But it's all essentially available in real time. So I think we can jump ahead. So the other key piece, of course, are these things called smart contracts. And so what smart contracts essentially do is that they're automatically executing pieces of code, right? And so it enables programmability within the carbon markets. Now, what do we mean about that? Well, we mean that people can set up automated credit purchases and retirements, right? We mean that then you can use smart contracts to essentially fractionalize credit transactions or combine carbon credits into what we call structured products. So essentially being able to take different types of carbon credits, put them together as one unit, and then sell them or retire them. And when you retire those, these smart contracts will retire all of those constituent assets at the same time. And then the other piece, which I believe in this presentation we're going to get into a bit with some of our project developer participants here, is the integration of dMRV. So if you have data coming from the off-chain world or from these projects on the ground, you can stream that data in to the credits themselves and add it to that metadata so it's available. So you can start to use remote sensing technologies or IoT or others to add that data environment. And essentially people can then go check the integrity of these projects in a much more real-time basis than they can today. And I think where we're moving into the market essentially is that rather than validating or you're verifying specific credits themselves, we can start to actually verify and validate the mechanisms for how that data is collected. And this is akin to, rather than verifying the pieces of paper coming out of a machine, you're verifying the machine itself. And once you do that and you connect that data together to these smart contracts, you can actually start to automate the issuance of the carbon credits themselves. And you can do this all secured on blockchain, have a full chain of custody of the data and the credit movement information available for auditing by any third party. Because again, these things are taking place on a public blockchain. So that's a bit of a future gazing of where we see things headed eventually. There's a lot of work, of course, to do to get there. But without further ado, I think I'll pass it over to our first project developer partner, Limenet. Thanks.
So thank you very much, Andrew, for the beautiful presentation. So hi, everybody. I'm Stefano Cappello. I'm the CEO and founder of Limenet. And I'm really pleased to be here to describe what we are doing in Italy about high quality carbon removal. And in particular, the journey that we are doing to reach net zero and to potentially give the opportunity to companies to reach net zero. So you can go ahead. The problem that everybody is facing is, of course, climate change. And the climate change is due to the fact that anthropogenic CO2 emission has been rising because of fossil fuel consumption. And that's why we are here. That's what it's all about. So it's not just because the temperature is rising, but there are also other problems regarding climate change. And one in particular that in Limenet we are really taking care of is ocean acidification. In our journey to net zero, we try to leverage the power of the nature to both remove CO2 from the atmosphere and then also contract ocean acidification. You can go ahead. The technology we are industrializing was inspired by nature. And in particular is an industrialization of a natural cycle called geological carbon cycle, in which naturally CO2 is captured by a rock that is called calcium carbonate or limestone, and that is transformed with seawater or with water in general into calcium bicarbonate. So calcium bicarbonate are in nature produced during the weathering of carbonate rock, but it takes a lot of time, so it takes thousands of years. But in Limenet, we are trying to speed up that process that is able to remove carbon permanently into the ocean as calcium bicarbonate. But there is another beautiful thing about this process, is that calcium bicarbonate, where they are in the ocean, when they are in the ocean, they counteract ocean acidification. And that is something that happens in nature, but in Limenet, we are trying to leverage up the, let's say, power of engineering and, and industrial processes to make it faster. You can go ahead. Just to give you an overview at high level about how technology works. So we are powered up by renewable electricity, and we take limestone that you can see here on the bottom of the slide. We process it into a kiln. So we basically turn this limestone into another material that is called lime, and that lime is used in order to capture CO2 from the atmosphere, such as direct air capture, basically. And from the other side is used in order to store the captured CO2 into the ocean as calcium bicarbonate. CO2 can be captured in a lot of ways, of course, but this is really a simple way how Limenet technology can work. And it just requires one raw material, that is limestone, that again is one of the most available raw material on planet Earth. And secondly, that limestone, when it's dissolved with CO2 into seawater, it contracts locally the ocean acidification. So you have a global co-benefit that, of course, is to decrease the CO2 in the atmosphere, and then a local co-benefit that is to increase the alkalinity, so the calcium bicarbonate into the ocean, and to decrease locally ocean acidification. And that is scientifically proven, that is incredible good for the marine biota, so for all the organisms that are living in the sea. You can go ahead. But just to give you an overview about who is behind this project. So when I was speaking with Daria, she asked me, okay, but let's try also to be a little bit emotional and try to also to speak about who is the actor behind Limenet. So just a few words about myself. So I'm 29 years old, and I'm from a city in Lake Como that some of you may know it, so in North Italy. And since I was a child, I was really, let's say, touching the, let's say, the problem of climate change. So, you know, the glaciers that are melting, when you don't see the snow during winter, when you go to the sea and you see coral bleaching. So it's something that since my childhood was hurting me a lot. You can go ahead. But you know, I did mechanical engineering, so I studied in the university in Milano, so in North Italy, and I went into a corporate. So after my studies, I went to Leonardo. It's a really big corporation in Italy that, as you can see here in this picture, we were doing aircraft, and in particular aircraft that were used during wars. So this really make me, you know, think a lot about my career, about my ethics, and I didn't want to do something not for the, you know, for my ethics, for the environment, and so I decided to quit my job. And as you can go ahead, and to start in the garage this process, how to remove carbon. Because I was really lucky to have in my network a few people that were studying as a research this method to remove carbon using limestone and to store the CO2 coming from the atmosphere into the ocean as calcium bicarbonate. So in my garage, you know, 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, I started this, you know, this small prototype. It was my grandmother's garage. And basically we did tests, so I was really, you know, a nerd. So I was programming my Arduino. So it's a software that is working with an hardware in order to understand how much CO2 is removed with the system. But the system was working really well, even though it was really preliminary. You can go ahead. So I decided, fortunately, to invest in this new project and to found a company. So we decided to found the Limenet in 2023 and to pursue the dream to really industrialize this technology and to be able to scale up, not just as a researcher, but as an industrial company that are able and is able to, to do carbon projects and to really have an impact in the world. You can go ahead. So right now we are a team of 16 people that is working full-time in the company. So we are working both in the industrial implementation, both in the research, because Limenet is one of the only company in the world, only few companies in the world that is studying how ocean alkalinity enhancement, how remove the carbon from the atmosphere and store it into the ocean can scale up and can work. So again, there is a lot of work to do about it regarding the research, etc. So this is what we are doing. And our goal is to be able to remove 1 million, so 1 megaton of CO2 by 2030. You can go ahead. And in 2024, as you may have seen in LinkedIn or in other press, so we set up our first industrial plant. So as you can see here from the garage 4 years ago, now we have a first industrial plant that is able to remove 800 tons potentially per year of negative emission. And we also decided to develop our methodology with a third party, really famous Italian verifier that's called RINA, ISO 14064, because one of our mantra is that, carbon market, carbon projects, sometimes lack of credibility, lack of measurability. And because this industrial project actually you are really able to understand with sensor how much CO2 you remove. So we decided to do this methodology and this project design document according to ISO 14064 to show stakeholders that what we do and what we claim is just what we have measured. You can go ahead. So these are some pictures that we did in order to showcase our first of a kind facility that right now is one of the world's first and world biggest facility that is able to remove carbon using seawater and using limestone. So of course this is still small, but in our strategy and in our roadmap to remove 1 megaton by 2030 is really big step forward. You can go ahead. Some of the key features that already Andrew explained before in the presentation is that, in my strategy as Limenet, I believe that if carbon market can scale up, needs to scale up also the credibility and the trust that buyers, stakeholders, people needs to know. So digital MRV and MRV in general, but in particular, digital MRV is something I believe will be the key for success for both projects, because if you are really able to measure with sensor, so with a high credibility, the CO2 that you remove, because CO2 is something you cannot touch. It's a commodity though, but it's something you cannot see. You can measure it, but you cannot see with your eyes. So it's really important to have an integrated MRV. And for the scale up, the vision that also I have in Limenet and also Andrew have in Carbonmark is that if we are able to really have not the MRV for the let's say how can we say to verify the MRV, but we are able to verify all the system, then we can also scale up the easiness, how we are able to issue a carbon credits into a register that, of course, is designed to have this infrastructure. And finally, also co-benefit, because if you remove carbon, but then you store it underground, I mean, maybe something you don't have a co-benefit, but if you're able to use the CO2 to contract a problem that CO2 causes, such as ocean acidification, we believe is also another key of success. And finally, we need to find out the projects that are able to scale up in different locations, in different parts of the world in parallel with a really easy technology. And I believe that ocean, it's something that the planet Earth should be called the planet ocean because more than 70% of our surface is the ocean. You can go ahead. So regarding how we work right now, So in Limenet, of course, we are a supplier of a technology. We are a supplier right now of a negative emission. So right now we partner with Carbonmark in order to have the first registry that uses right now a methodology that is verified by IRENA. Of course, another thing that also we discussed yesterday with Andrew is that for scale up, those projects need also to rely on a shared methodology that is trusted by all the stakeholders. So it's really important that for the scale up, we have like UNCC that have a methodology that is shared with everything and everybody. And then we have a marketplace. We need a marketplace to increase the liquidity of the system, but right now is lack of liquidity. And finally, of course, the customer that has climate targets goals. You can go ahead. So just to give you an overview, because maybe it's complex, how we are integrating the blockchain tracking system for the digital MRV. So basically we have two levels. So the real level of our industrial plant, in which we have a batch of raw material that is entering the facility. And then we have smart contracts with sensors that are, they are understanding how much CO2 or better, how much raw material is entering the facility. Then we process it, and then we have a removal of the CO2. So meanwhile, during those parts of the process, so what we are aiming to do and what we are doing is that we use different smart contracts in order to understand each part of the process, how was done. So to have a real-time information that not just is on our, let's say, that is on our knowledge, so in our industrial, electric board where we have all the information, but it's something that also into the blockchain is available for all stakeholders. So it's really important for the scale up to showcase trust to all stakeholders. So everybody can see what Limenet is doing in South Italy, what Limenet is doing in North America, what One Earth is doing in the, in another place in the world. So this is really important because everybody needs to know what's happening. You can go ahead. So the vision that we have, and I'm really happy that also we share with Carbonmark since 1 year, is that we need to collaborate in this early stage market to make those projects happen in real life and to understand how to make it cost efficient with a real-time integration data and also potentially with a disintermediation. You can go ahead. Why that? Because we need to decrease the difficulties that Limenet and also all of my fellow colleagues in the VCM are facing. Because we have a lot of course, time delays because all these projects are new. So we have to obtain permits because our industrial facility, we need to raise funds, equity funds in order to prove investor that those projects are real, that there are buyers outside that are able and will to buy it. We need to improve the standard methodologies. We need to delay the certification. For instance, we removed those tons of CO2 in 2024, and we are still waiting the verifier to come in. So again, if we're able to integrate a digital MRV, all of those times would be decreased. And finally, those projects need to be bankable. So if we're able to have, long offtake agreements, we are able to co-finance in a better way those kind of projects. You can go ahead. So finally, I really appreciate this time that also Daria and Andrew give to me, and also for Klimadar and Carbonmark to be the first climate champion for Limenet, for believe on us and in our project. So thank you very much, and I give the floor to Gordon.
Thank you, Stefano. It will be difficult to follow up on such an outstanding presentation. But the good thing is that you are on the high end of technology and we are on the lowest end of technology. So the differences will be in the presentation as well. Thank you for having me, Andrew and Daria. It's a pleasure to be able to present today on behalf of One Earth Fund. One Earth Fund, if you don't mind going forward, is we are a nonprofit based out of the United States, and our focus is on the diversion of food waste away from landfills and into what we call biological decomposition processes. Put simply, composting or in the future, insect cultivation. But essentially, we take food waste and we are enabling our partners to increase the amount of food waste diversion that they take and generate compost. That has two beneficial outcomes for the planet. One, the reduction of food waste into landfills, which results in a significant output of carbon dioxide, but mostly through greenhouse gas impacts of methane and nitrous oxide, which have a significant amount of greater warming impact than carbon dioxide. And then two, it provides soil amendments that go back into topsoil, which is a somewhat analogous to what Stefano is doing in the ocean, what we would do on the ground, and creating healthier topsoil, which is able to capture more carbon. So we decided to go after this because we wanted a simple process that has been in existence since prehistory, that also had large-scale impact. So just to provide some quick scaling, in the United States alone, around 330 million tons of food is wasted a year. And that's a significant amount of resulting greenhouse gas that also results from that. So we looked at a very big problem and wanted to find out a simple solution, which already existed, and one that could be easily tracked, which will map to our building our relationship with Carbonmark as well. So what do we do? We help to our composting partners to generate offset credits through the voluntary carbon market. We help to facilitate the trades, and that's like a partner like Carbonmark is essential to us. And then finally, we support reinvestment. So all the generation of revenue from offset credits goes back to our partners that allows them to reinvest and expand their facility capabilities to take on more food waste. So it's a virtuous cycle between them. Next slide, please. So our projects, and the first one we're launching with Carbonmark is with Black Earth Compost. They're based out of Massachusetts here in the United States. And they are a traditional composter. They have multiple facilities where they're bringing in food waste from residential and commercial providers and taking that food waste and creating compost that is returned to the local agriculture and gardening community. So it is truly the template of how we want to operate in terms of diverting food waste and then providing it back to increase soil health. We have future projects that are pending in Jacksonville, Florida, and Atlanta, Georgia, here as well in the United States. But our model is global, and the standards we use provide the opportunity to take this global as well. Our future state is the investment into insect cultivation, which provides a even larger industrial capacity for food waste diversion. And the benefit of that is that it actually is a faster cycle or faster process in composting. So it has an even greater, I should say, a more positive impact on the reduction of greenhouse gases through basically the process of insects growing from eggs through their larval stage and eating a significant amount of food waste in a very short period of time. And so we're looking at, we have some projects slated in Austin, Texas, and Baton Rouge, Louisiana, all in the US. But again, this is this standard that we're developing would also be applicable globally. Next slide, please. So very simple layout of one of our sites. Our composters take in food waste. They divert them from three primary sources: residential, commercial, and industrial. And this is just a real world example of what one of our sites looks like. Some it would look maybe a little distasteful, but to me it looks like a perfect project. And if you're in compost, you would get excited about this. So you have the various different stages and the processes that go into that. And why this is important is that it provides clearly accountable stages that allow for the accurate tracking of these processes through, I should say, through the compost process. So a calibrated amount of food waste is delivered It's measured, and then the output at the end of the process is compost. So that was one of our goals, is creating a clearly defined, simple but accountable process that allows for transparency and the authenticity of the credits, which is paramount, as Andrew addressed earlier, in terms of the market, in terms of the desire for voluntary credits. Stands on the trust of the two parties, and have to trust that the credits they're getting meet their standard. And so that's why composting is, and while definitely not as exciting or complex and technologically innovative as what Stefano is doing, we have the same result in the end. But our process is less scientific and more biologic, but both provide such great accountability, which we hope is one of the key components of the success of our projects within the Carbonmark portfolio. So next slide, please. Thank you. So the scale of our projects, as stated, we have a large amount of food waste in the United States alone, but that is applicable to the rest of the world as well. So for standard composters, they range from about 250 metric tons to 8,000 metric tons per month, depending on the waste inputs. So in a single year, a municipal composting facility in the United States can generate a significant amount of food waste and therefore resulting compost. And the result of that is increased greenhouse gas reduction. For insect composting, they are a little bit smaller right now. It's also because insect composting is regulated typically by food or agricultural entities, because the output of the insect composting facility is livestock feed. So those have to be even more scrutinous than traditional composting, and that's why you see a smaller current volume on that. However, with that in mind, the insect composting has the greatest ability to scale because of the industrial capacity that it has, and also it's the market demand we see growing significantly for insect proteins in the livestock market, and also in the human food chain as well, as those become more regulated. So that is an area of great scaling, and why we're interested in that. Next slide, please. So our current Carbonmark project is based, as I said, in Massachusetts. Every picture you're seeing here is from our facilities. This one here has a dual facility with an indoor component where processing takes place, and provides a significant amount of transparency for any of our buyers. They are able to take a look, and actually there are real-time feeds so that they can see the actual process going. If you're a compost nerd like me, that's something you would actually watch and get excited about. But for others, it's a way to verify that they're getting authentic credits through their investment. This one has about 2,800 metric tons per year CO2 offset. We are ISO 1464 compliant process as well. And our project meets both the Climate Action Reserve's Organic Waste Composting 2013 version 1.1 and the ACM 0022 with the addendums requirements as well for project for methodology validity. Next slide, please. I think maybe the most important slide is why do one choose Carbonmark? And as the title said, we tried almost all the others. So we have been through multiple registries. We've been through the process with major national and global level registries, and the result has led us that we needed something innovative, and we were very lucky that Carbonmark launched at the time it did, and it provided us with that kind of lifeboat because we had run the course through multiple registries, and for all the reasons that Stefano brought up earlier, the same applicable to us. What it provides for us is a logical and efficient project validation process. The team at Carbonmark is, as said, the next bullet is outstanding collaborative support, helping us get through the process quickly as we sort of did some discovery and learning together, and their desire to innovate, and their desire to achieve. It's been a real benefit to us, and so we've been greatly appreciative of that. As stated during the course of the presentation, our projects align well with the authenticity the blockchain provides. We have, essentially industrial scale processes that are easily measurable, that are easily validated and easily audited. And those are sort of the key components of what the blockchain brings, and why we were excited with Carbonmark's launch to be part of that launch. And then lastly, to not cover ground that Stefano has already covered, it's the rapid access to markets and the transparency for project marketing, the ability to provide the authenticity of blockchain-backed credits is a critical, I think, part of the voluntary carbon market going forward. So for us, this was an absolute, fortunate timing that allowed us to partner with Carbonmark, and we look forward to this being our first of many projects going forward. So thank you very much, and back over to Andrew and Dorian.
Super. Yeah, thanks, Gordon, for that overview. Of course, we're really excited to partner with both One Earth Fund and with Limenet. I think in their own ways, they're both innovative projects here. And so for the remaining part of the presentation, I want to deep dive a bit more into why Carbonmark began to offer this type of service and how that works, and why different types of project developers may be interested. So we can go to the next slide there. So first, a bit about Carbonmark. Well, one, because we're using blockchain technology, you do have full transparency on the market pricing and data in real time. If you go to carbonmark.com today, you can see the 15 million plus credits that we have with live pricing and availability information. We also have instant settlement with immutable proof, meaning that these transactions that are executed on the blockchain, they're not going to get double counted or anything like that. You do have instant settlement because we're partnered with Circle's USDC, which is a US digital dollar stablecoin. And we work as a marketplace to connect buyers and sellers more directly, again, so that we can have a greater share of that financing going to the project developers themselves. And finally, through leveraging smart contracts, we can automate a lot of these market operations. So for example, through our API, people can plug in. In reality, they don't even know they're using blockchain underneath, but they're able to automate the purchase and the retirement of credits that they choose. And that API is being used by various fintech companies, other carbon players, and emissions analysis sort of SaaS companies use it to pull in liquidity to basically fulfill the offset demand that their own clients have. So next slide. At a high level about us, we have over 160 projects on the platform. That'll be +2 shortly with Limenet and One Earth Fund as well. We're working to retire our first 1 million tons. I'm hoping that happens in the next month or so. We'll see what we can do there. And we do have a quite global team. We're international. We're spread across 6 different locations around the world, and that allows us to work with great clients, internationally. So with that, I think we can jump to the problem that we solve with Carbonmark Direct. Well, essentially, the more novel methodologies, especially in the carbon removal space, are not always supported by existing registries. And as project developers know, if you want to have a new methodology that's accepted, this can be quite an arduous process and take quite a bit of time, even if the methodologies are accepted by third-party VVBs, for example. So what we wanted to do is essentially provide those carbon projects with a home to issue their credits. And the fact that we were already on blockchain, which essentially is a ledger of transactions, allowed us to co-opt that infrastructure to serve as a pseudo registry, if you will. With the benefit that our existing marketplace functionality provides that interface for people to be able to manage, well, the issuance, the tracking of the credits, whether they want to sell them through the marketplace, the API, or just to retire them on behalf of their own clients. So we wanted to become a one-stop shop to enable that functionality, essentially. And then the other piece that we mentioned here is that these blockchain native credits, while today, they can be tied to certain metadata, both off-chain and on-chain, where we envision this going is being able to actually tie in live dMRV data directly to the projects. The first stage of that is just going to be additional data feeds. It could be based on satellite monitoring. It could be based on IoT sensors, like with what Limenet's doing, looking at the CO2 concentration in seawater. But eventually, those data feeds could actually be used to manage the issuance of the credits themselves with smart contracts. And there's some preliminary work on that. But again, I think long-term, this is where the market is headed, because it's going to provide a far more scalable solution to credit issuance. So next slide then. So essentially how this works, right? So we already have a blockchain-based platform. We're using that to manage and track the issuance of these credits. We want to link the dMRV data and basically provide other integrations with other platforms. So we already have, for example, MSCI and Allied Offsets utilizing our API to pull in data on the availability and the pricing of projects. For any of the projects that get issued directly to our platform, of course, that data then becomes available. And I think this is going to be especially interesting for some of the CDR players that are out there, because right now, there aren't carbon registries that are hosting some of these methodologies and accepting new projects to register there. And that essentially means that these players are, they may have third-party certification, but you're just sharing PDFs of retirements, and there's internal systems that they're using. And so you have to trust these players that these internal systems are actually tracking all of the issuances and retirements properly. The beauty of blockchain is that it's often called a trustless system, meaning that you don't need to trust Carbonmark, for example. The blockchain itself is publicly verifiable, and you can see all of the activity that essentially is taking place there in regard to retirement and the issuance themselves. So next slide then, Dario. All right, so how does this work then? Well, we have a credit intake module. We do collect, some of the common information that you'd be used to. There's the project design documents, of course, validation documents, verification. Right now we are only working with projects, of course, that do have some sort of third-party VVB or certification body, some sort of technical certifier that produces the reports on the project's integrity and so on. And then from there, those credits get issued to the Carbonmark account. And from there, again, you can manage your credit inventory, initiate retirements, do any of the things that you'd like to do, with the added benefit that it's a seamless experience to list your credits on our marketplace. And you also gain some of the benefits of having a blockchain native credit. So for example, through our API, we enable fractionalized retirements. We work with a lot of fintech companies that are basically retiring carbon for every transaction that they have go through their system. This could be things like a credit card transaction, purchasing a flight, whatever it may be. In those cases, oftentimes you're retiring, could be 50 kilograms, 100 kilograms, whatever it may be. In any case, we provide the full retirement functionality for those, let's say, smaller, sub-ton retirements, and produce retirement certificates automatically for all of those. And all of that is fully traceable on chain for those players. So I think I've covered the API bit on that, so we can jump to the next, the last bit here. So essentially the co-marketing collaboration. Our project pages are designed to host media about the projects. That's pictures and videos. Oops, sorry, I think you have to go back. There you go. So it also includes collateral material. We have a great marketing team that creates these info sheets and one-pagers that are drawn from all the project documentation. And we also take those PDD documents and we use our own AI tooling essentially to create project descriptions from all that data to pull together on our project pages. So all that information then can go out to our newsletters, of course, shared on webinars like this, and across our different social channels to allow our existing client base to know about these projects. And we see ourselves as your partner in this, right? We want to help drive financing to these impactful projects around the world, and we do believe that at a fundamental level, the infrastructure we're utilizing can help facilitate that process, bring more transparency and traceability to the market, and ultimately, help scale things up for impact long term. With that, thanks again for everybody attending this, and I think now we'll open it up to questions.
Thank you, everybody, for your presentation. So it was really great to see your personal stories and the stories of your project and what you have accomplished, and what's there is so much more to come. That's really great to see it. Yeah, let's jump into the questions. Just give it a couple of minutes, for people to drop the questions in the chat.
I do see one here about recognizing carbon credits in this manner to carbon accounting firms. Well, it really depends what the client goals are. So for example, if you're an airline and you need to purchase CORSIA applicable credits, well, then you would want to be purchasing credits, of course, from standards that are CORSIA applicable. And we do have we have registry support for those types of credits on the platform itself. When it comes to more generally companies making carbon neutral claims or something of that nature, well, it depends on their jurisdiction, but really these companies should be being transparent about what is the standard, what's the methodology, what's the credit type. We provide all that information on who the third party VVB is, for example. So that's really what these companies need to report. And of course, all of that information is available through credits that are also issued directly into the blockchain through Carbonmark.
Yeah, let me just read it out loud. So how do we go about emission-based carbon credit? We initiated a tricycle conversion project from ICE to electric.
I think we would need more information there. What I would say is if you're a project developer here and you are developing something that you think the solution we've developed could be helpful for you to reach the market, if you do go to carbonmark.com and you go to the suppliers section, you can reach a form essentially to express your interest, and then we can collect the information we need to evaluate your project.
Yeah, so that was a great question.
Yeah.
So.
And maybe before if there's another one that comes in, well, I'll quick answer Alicia's question here, but I would say Stefano or Gordon, if there's any last thoughts that you guys have, just things that you want to share about your own companies or your initiatives, we'll give you the time to do that quick. But let me answer Alicia. So about the pricing. So essentially, well, one, we find ourselves to be very competitive in terms of the classic registries for the issuance costs, project registration, and so on. So there is a cost per credit. There is, of course, work on our side that we do to pull in all of the content around the projects to register it and to get things issued, set up your Carbonmark account. But that pricing is essentially based on the scale of the project. One of the reasons I've had initial interest in a pipeline of players is that some of these projects are quite small scale. And so if you look at the current fee structure on some of the traditional registries, it's essentially infeasible for these projects to register and then issue credits to them. There just simply won't be any ROI and they won't be able to expand their work. So we, because we are leveraging infrastructure that's existing on the blockchain, we are able to keep the cost structure quite low and therefore open an avenue for these smaller scale projects to be able to issue credits. And maybe with that, because I know we're coming up on time, maybe Dario, we pass it over to Stefano and Gordon, guys, if there's any last thoughts on your side.
Maybe the last thought is that I see in the chat, does the project need to be applicable for a specific methodology of any specific registry? So basically, just to give you some insights, so right now, there are a bunch of new methods, new pathways to make high quality carbon removal. And all of those pathways requires a specific methodology. However, I see that more we go on this market and more is structured, there would be like high level methodologies, and then each company needs to comply with. It's like ISO 9001. So I believe that then each registry should, comply with this kind of high-level standard. But I believe also after the COP29 in Baku in Azerbaijan, after the approval of the Article 6.4, there will be more movement. So I think in the next year we will see more things going on respect to transparency, to credibility for projects, and for the scale up. I don't know, Andrew, if you want to say something from your insights as a registry.
Well, I think there are various, let's say, integrity initiatives. There's the new markets coming on with the Paris Agreement, PACM credits, essentially. Paris Agreement carbon mitigations, I think, is what that acronym stands for at this point. And so we have to see how some of these broader standards fit into that. As you pointed out, Stefano, it could be that we've seen ICR registry, for example, align with a certain ISO standard, in addition to having specific methodologies. So some of these other initiatives may look at the methodology level, or they may look at something broader that the registries are doing. So, and we'll keep our eyes on that as things develop.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it will help everybody for the scale up.
Certainly. Maybe if there's no other questions, Gordon, any words from your side before we wrap things up here?
No, I should say no. The only addition is that I think what Carbonmark is providing is definitely the answer to a lot of the questions that other registries have not been able to answer, which is, how to more rapidly move these into market, because buyers have a limited attention span, just like everyone else. So from our experience, engaging them and continuing to commit to, we're always almost there to get to market has really inhibited ability to monetize on behalf of our partners. And so I think what Carbonmark's presented is an accelerated path to answer that question. I think everyone should be excited about that because for the last 7 years that we've been in this market, we've been almost there dozens of times, and it's never been able to do it. I think Carbonmark has provided that final ability to really get past the finish line and into the market. So we're excited and definitely look forward to the future together.
Super. I appreciate that sentiment, Gordon. This is all possible because of us working with partners like yourself that are also, on the bleeding edge of trying to help move this market forward and accelerate things. And we want to make sure that our platform is facilitating that.
Yeah. It's so important.
Yeah, one step at a time. Yeah, but we are all in this together. Good. Yeah. So I think I'll wrap it up and just for a follow-up. So I will share a recording, the links to the docs if you want to, take a deep dive into the technology behind the product. And I will share the links to Limenet and One Earth Fund if you want to dive in the story and behind the projects. So yeah, thank you so much for being with us today. So yeah, and have a great day. Yes, thank you, Stefano and Gordon, for joining us today.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.